It's a year where the race for the bottom is nearly as exciting as the race for the Stanley Cup. Now, you can't blame teams for tanking. It's not their job to protect the integrity of the National Hockey League. All they want to do is sell tickets and win, and in that order. Toronto Maple Leafs. Whatever they need to do to achieve those goals, within or slightly just outside the rules, is totally fair game. Now, this definitely isn't the first time that tanking has happened. Look back to the 1984 draft when the Penguins tanked for Mario Lemieux. Saved their franchise the first time, and then they went on to win 2 Stanley Cups with them. And then we can't forget about those Ottawa Senators who tanked, only to get Alexander Daigle. Probably the biggest bust in NHL history. Shame on you guys. So let's take a look and profile some of the teams that have a shot at the first overall pick, and we all know who that's going to be.
Connor McDavid.
Connor McDavid?
Yeah, it's Connor McDavid. Now let's start with the Buffalo Sabres, who currently hold a record of 19-40-5. The Buffalo Sabres have made the Stanley Cup playoffs 4 times under the new NHL, with 2 straight conference final appearances.
That was like 8 years ago, asshole. People don't forget.
Yeah, that was like 8 years ago. Now keep in mind the Buffalo Sabres have never won a cup and haven't had a first overall selection in the draft since 1987 when they selected Pierre Turgeon. The Sabres are a team who made it clear from the beginning of the season that they were headed straight for the bottom. And unlike any of these other teams in the list, I think it's safe to say that there was no hope from the get-go. Do me a favor and try to name more than 6 players on the Sabres starting roster right now, and no going to NHL.com. Hodgson, Molson, Gianta, Ennis, Gergensons, Foligno. Okay, I'm correct. But don't even ask me what the Buffalo Sabres are going to do about the goaltending situation. The team currently has a goal differential of -92 and has Chad Johnson and Anders Lind back in net. Man, the Sabres better hope Andre Makarov develops into a solid NHL goaltender, because the future between the pipes is not looking good. That's all besides the point. Even if the Sabres finish dead last, they only have a 20% chance of landing the first overall pick. 80% chance that they won't get the first overall pick. So, was throwing the season away completely and embarrassing your franchise worth it? Apparently those odds are still appealing to Sabres GM Tim Murray. Who does it look like they're going to get? Yeah, everyone's saying Connor McDavid. But not if frontrunner for the Hobie Baker, Jack Eichel, has anything to say about it. Next up, the Edmonton Oilers. Oh, the Edmonton Oilers. Currently holding a record of 18-36-10. Now, what would fans of the National Hockey League and its other teams think about the Edmonton Oilers getting yet another first overall pick?
No! No!
Come on, how many first overall picks do you need in order to turn that ship around? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Taylor Hall, Neil Yakupov. Now don't get me wrong, I certainly don't hate the Edmonton Oilers. 2006 was the last time they made the Stanley Cup playoffs, where they went to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final and lost to the Carolina Hurricanes. And that team was one of my favorite teams to have ever watched in hockey. Nothing but heart. The Edmonton Oilers have not made the playoffs since, and they hold a record of 261, 347, and 78 during that time. I'm just annoyed with this organization, and I feel awful for their fans. Been waiting for so long, no playoffs, and they're not even close. And you gotta feel bad for the Oilers. No one wants to go to Edmonton to play. The only thing longer than the winter in Edmonton is the Edmonton Oilers season. Next up, it's the Arizona Coyotes. The record of 20-37-7. Now everyone drop what they're doing, head to Vegas right now, and put money down on the fact that the Coyotes are going to land the first overall selection. They're going to get Connor McDavid. They're going to save this franchise, because everyone knows that Gary Bettman wants this to happen. Coyotes have made the Stanley Cup playoffs 3 times under the new NHL. Their latest being a conference final appearance in 2012 when they were down by the Los Angeles Kings, who went on to win the Stanley Cup. Not so bad. So who out there actually wants the Arizona Coyotes to get the first overall pick? What's hockey? Why don't they have that ring around the puck? What are those blue lines for? Those blue lines up there. Well, one would think Gary Bettman would. It's not the first time that a franchise has been in jeopardy only to then land a generational superstar in the next draft. The Coyotes haven't had a pick higher than 12th in the draft since they selected Oliver Ekman-Larsson in 2009 with the 6th overall pick. The Coyotes didn't look that horrible on paper to start the season, did they? Well, at the deadline, they made themselves get a lot worse. The Coyotes traded away 2 veteran defensemen in McCulloch and Yandel, and it looks like this team is gunning for last place after having lost 10 straight hockey games.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Even if the Arizona Coyotes don't land the first overall pick, Help is clearly on its way for this team. They've got Max Domi, Mark Byzantine, Anthony Duclair, Lucas Lessio, Toby Reeder. Things are about to change for this team, so all is not lost. Next up is the Carolina Hurricanes, who currently have a record of 24, 31, and 7. Let's all not have a pity party for the Carolina Hurricanes, because we can't forget that they won a Stanley Cup in 2006. In my lifetime, I've seen that team win a Stanley Cup. Can't say the same about the other teams on this list. The Hurricanes also made a conference final in 2009. I'm not really feeling bad for them. The one thing I will say though is it looks like this team does need to re-spark their fan base. The Hurricanes have never had a first overall pick, their closest being a second overall pick, which they used to select Eric Staal in 2003, and 3 years later he was an integral part of that 2006 Stanley Cup winning team. I myself am a fan of the National Hockey League. I want to see the sport grow, and I want to see it thrive in southern markets. And that's Gary Bettman's goal as well, and everyone has to understand that. So, if Connor McDavid did land with the Carolina Hurricanes, I wouldn't be too disappointed. And last, but certainly not least, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have a record right now of 26, 33, and 5. The Leafs have made the Stanley Cup playoffs one time since the lockout in 2004 and 2005. Yeah, it's been a really brutal drought. Season after season, Leafs have had their fans saying the same thing. You blew it! The Leafs are crazy. The Leafs have had a completely bizarre season this year. They look pretty strong out of the gate, and then around December, that 18-wheeler went off a cliff again. Oh, again? How many times can that happen? They're gonna miss the playoffs for the 9th time in 10 seasons, and for the 2nd consecutive year, this awful collapse will have happened. I mean, you've got tweets going live to TSN about players banging other players' wives. This season has been a complete nightmare. Toronto Maple Shanahans look like they're ready for the rebuild that they've needed for years, and I think that it was necessary for them to hit rock bottom in order to convince all of Leaf Nation that a rebuild was necessary. Now, Leaf fans, this is kind of scary. Not every team who goes through the rebuilds can come out on top and have a dynasty like the Blackhawks, like the Kings, and a little bit lesser, maybe like the Penguins. Take a look at the Edmonton Oilers. The hockey gods owe the Toronto Maple Leafs and their fans one this year. Please give us the first overall pick. Please give us the first overall. Getting rid of David Clarkson was great, yes. Coming out on top of the draft lottery would be the ultimate gift for fans of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the organization, of course. The Maple Leafs have not had a first overall pick since 1985. Who did they use to select with that pick? Wendell Clark. Honorable mention going out to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have also lost a ton of games straight and could be in the running for the first overall pick as well. Thanks for watching the first episode of the NHL Flash. This was Tank Nation. Until next time.